Okay. Hello, everyone. The joys of technology. So I have been working diligently to get the stream set up. I know I'm a few minutes late, so I wanted to thank everyone for stopping by. I am still learning how to do the stream thing. It's very exciting, though. I love it. So thank you to everyone that decided to join. This is Federal Program Management Professional channel on YouTube. It's designed basically for federal PMs to get together and talk, and for myself to kind of deliver information about the experiences that I've had over my 20 years or so as a federal PM to help folks out, help you learn how to become a PM, what kind of issues and challenges you might run into, and how you can overcome them. So also, I want to have an open dialogue, so questions will be received and picked up from the audience. I'm always very excited to hear from you as well if you have any questions. And we'll get started in just a minute. Okay, thank you folks for joining tonight on a Thursday evening. This will be an ongoing series, hopefully. I'm looking to do these on a recurring basis, Thursday nights every so often, probably every 2 weeks, just to open up some time that we could have together to talk about what it's like being a federal program manager, what it takes to become a federal program manager, and kind of the issues and challenges that we run into on a pretty regular basis being a federal program manager. It is one of the most interesting and challenging careers I think you could have. It has a lot of different facets to it that I would like to talk about and kind of help you work through. It can be very mentally challenging, so I would even like to discuss things like mechanisms and ways to deal with some of the pressure that you feel as a federal program manager. So those topics will be coming up as we continue to have these discussions ongoing. If you have joined in and you're interested in asking any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. I am monitoring, so I'm interested in specifically responding to any questions, but I've got a couple of things that I'll go through in each session. For tonight, the topic that I wanted to talk about was, how do you become a federal program manager? What are things that you can do to prepare yourself for this kind of job? And it's because there's a lot of questions around that. A lot of folks that are trying to figure out, okay, well, if I want to become a federal PM, what kind of things do I need to do to get to that particular job? And there's a million different ways to do that. And one thing that I wanted to mention is a lot of what I'll be talking about are just my own experiences. And again, you could have radically different experiences and ways that you may have gotten to become a PM, or even having family or friends that have also become managers and project managers and program managers that have gone about it a completely different way. These are just some experiences that I had that I would like to share to try to help you along the path. Again, your mileage may vary, and just pick out the things that work. If you hear something that resonates, great. If you hear something that doesn't really feel like it's for you, that's great too. Again, I just want to share the experiences that I've had to try to help kickstart folks and move them along in their careers. When I started my career, I started kind of as a what I would consider an order taker in the IT space. So I did service requests for an IT consultant to the government. So I've been in the federal kind of space for my entire career. And what I was always interested in at the time was I knew that I wanted to run a program. I knew that I wanted to be able to manage the delivery of services like this because I was excited to make a difference. I really wanted to be able to help our federal government become more efficient. I really had these ideas that was the goal, and I wanted to make sure that I grew my career so that I could deliver those kinds of things. I was always excited about customer service and making sure that we had good happy customers, and that the customers that we worked with got were delivered the best possible service. I was always happy about doing those kinds of things. It always fulfilled me to be able to provide that kind of support to help drive efficiencies and make the agency that I was working with a little better. That was always the goal. And so early on, I knew that I wanted to reach kind of those particular levels to become a program manager, even account managers, and other stuff that I've been throughout my career. But in order to get started, one of the there's a couple of aspects that I wanted to talk about, at least for tonight, and I'll throw them up on the screen just to get us started. And if you have any questions and you want to ask them, go ahead and throw them in the chat. I'm happy to kind of change gears and look at those pieces as well. I do have some ground rules that I want to share with everyone before we get started. I'll just leave them on the screen for a bit, and you can read them. This is designed to be a supportive space, so if there's comments and a lot of times trolls and bots will hit these types of streams, so please just ignore them. I will be trying to mute them as quickly as possible if and when they do show up. And again, my answers are my personal experience, and they could be completely different from yours. I'd love to hear what your experiences have been in the program management space. I think we could all learn from each other, which is I always think the best way to learn is collectively. And I'll be speaking in generalities about the federal program manager space. I won't necessarily be getting into specifics. So questions that are specific, either personal, private, or even about contracts or customers that I've served in the past, I'm going to skip. So again, if there's anything that you're interested in talking about, I may answer, may not. So I do reserve the right to answer specific questions. So, but please feel free to ask. I do want to share specific examples and experiences that I've had to help make your travel and career in program management a little bit better. So as I mentioned before, what are some of the items that you need to become a PM? And I kind of started with mindset because for a lot of us, that's really the place that you need to start. Is you have to be driven and interested and excited about doing something like this because it is a lot of work. There are a lot of elements that you're going to need to nurture and create that will help you in your path to becoming a PM. So I wanted to talk about mindset across the board. First and foremost, I always lead with integrity. And I think this is true of, any type of field that you want to go into. Whatever you're doing in your job, you want to operate with integrity, because over my career, operating in that mode with integrity, with the benefit of the customer in mind, doing the right thing, always being above board and trying to be transparent has always benefited me. I have always seen growth in programs. I've always seen positive responses from customers. It really is the best practice that you can start off with is, operate with that kind of integrity, and also operate with a mindset towards delivery. And I'll talk about service at the very end. You want to be a servant both to your customer, but also to your own staff and your own experts that are on your team. You really want to be able to serve a lot of people. That sense of service needs to be really important. So keep that in mind when you are trying to excel in in your path towards program management. Keep that mindset in place. Always deliver with the utmost integrity. People will notice, and especially when you start to get into team lead status or a supervisor status, people are watching and they will emulate you. So if you create a kind of a culture of integrity, a lot of times that will filter down through the organization. Of course, everybody is going to have experiences that are different, and you might run into folks that just don't follow that particular guidance and don't operate with integrity. And those are the ones that you're going to be able to recognize and be able to replace. And I hate to be harsh, but that's what you've got to do. You must make sure that integrity is a driving factor throughout your entire organization. And it's not that hard to do. I know there's a lot of negativity in the world today, but a lot of the people that I meet in my role and in my job day to day, and I've met thousands, the vast majority are really good people, and many of them have been incredibly beneficial to my life. So I tend to be a little bit more positive about people, and so I hope that you will too, because I do think long term, as you go through life, you're going to meet a lot of good people, and you'll have a couple of bad eggs. Just it's the nature of the beast. So again, just be cognizant of that and try to always operate with integrity. The next one I have here is overachievement. So there's a lot of discussion going around today about the hustle culture and the mindset of I've got to kill myself to get ahead, and I've always got to be working harder and harder and harder. I'll say that in the beginning of my career, that was a big mindset that I had too, which was I always tried to go above and beyond, because in my experience, on both sides of the house, as a employee and as a manager later on. As an employee, your managers will notice if you're thinking outside the box and trying to help them and focusing on things that would be important to the delivery of the service that you're involved in. So, for example, if you're delivering, and I'm going to use IT services as a lot of the examples here, because that's just what I've lived in for the past 20 years. If you know that you have a customer that has some challenges with things like automation and stuff like that, and you're delivering an enterprise IT service desk, if you can go out and learn about automation or understand the tools that you're using in your environment and come up with some ideas to say, hey, this would be something that I think would be beneficial to try out, and you bring that to a supervisor or a manager. Now, sometimes you're gonna run into a little bit of a block, and I will say that up front is sometimes you've got managers that again do not operate with integrity, and you're gonna run into a little bit of a block there. Be cognizant of that, and if that's the case, then make sure that you're being heard somewhere in the chain. And what I mean by that is if you feel like your manager is not operating with integrity and is not helping you to develop your career and get better and improve, then you need to go around that blockage and provide an idea up the chain to their manager. Now, again, as soon as you do that, right, you start to get some visibility because you're essentially jumping chain of command. But sometimes you're just going to have to do that, particularly if you're driven and you want to, improve your career and move ahead. So if you got a great idea, bring that up, and continue to bring it up. So one thing I will say, a lot of times managers are focused on their own stuff, and so even if you bring them a good idea, it might not be the right timing. There may be some other reasons why they may not engage with you immediately. Keep bringing it up or asking them what else you can do to, help to move those things along. I think that getting that visibility will really help. And a lot of times, if there is an opportunity for you to take a leadership class or a management training class as you're moving up the chain, take advantage of that, because if you are someone that constantly is bringing ideas to your managers and supervisors and leaders, they're going to see you as someone that wants to excel in your job and move up the chain, and so you have a better shot of taking advantage of a lot of that training. Now, one thing I'll say, in the federal space, a lot of times, you've got an entire breadth of different types of companies that work and operate in the federal space. Of course, you have everything from small businesses to extremely large businesses. I've had an opportunity to work in a couple of very large businesses, but also a couple of small businesses during my career, and they're very different. As far as what benefits are being offered to you as you kind of go through your career, but most of them will offer at least some sort of compensation or training package to you as a benefit. And the only time that doesn't happen maybe is if you're working for a staffing agency, and that's a different story that we, if you got questions about that, I'd be happy to talk with you more about that too, because it is that's a different situation. But take advantage of that training budget to ask for training. A lot of times, and I'll mention this because it can be frustrating for folks that are looking for training, your manager won't design training for you or suggest training. You kind of have to go out and look for it. And I always had to do that. I was always interested in, I had looked at potentially getting an additional degree or certification in IT services. And it took a while for me to try to move up the stack and figure out, okay, I think I want to do an MBA and get that out of the way up front. And so a couple things about that. Number one, generally in the federal space, you are going to run into requirements for labor categories. So they generally have, and a lot of them will have, so when I say labor categories, if I overspeak or make it too complicated, let me know, because unfortunately, like I said, I've lived it so long, I just spout out stuff that may or may not be simplified. So labor categories is generally a designation that happens on contracts with the federal government. And what those are kind of bands of jobs that are either specified by the government directly or are pretty standard for your company to deliver to the federal government. And so, for example, it might be a systems engineer, and there may be 3 different bands of that: system engineer 1, 2, and 3. And each one of those is going to have some sort of generally schooling and experience requirements in them. So when it comes to training and things like that, keep that in mind. Most of and I'll say this is tough. Most of them do require, a bachelor's degree and I say most of them, that's not entirely true. A lot of them do require bachelor's degrees to, kind of move up the chain into the more advanced pieces. But a lot of times you can either offset that with schooling or even work experience. So keep that in mind. But I have seen, certainly on multiple contracts that I've delivered, there has been kind of a limitation that you have to have a bachelor's degree, you have to have gone through college. But also now more than ever, things like ECPI or other training certifications a lot of times can carry even more weight. So don't discount yourself if you haven't been able to work through that, or if you've got your high school degree and you're in a training program for becoming a technician. That is not always a limitation, but always keep in the back of your mind, it's going to benefit you to have schooling, just simply because some of the requirements that you see in government contracts include that. So it sometimes helps to have that additional oomph in your pocket, so to speak. So the other thing is, when you become a program manager, a lot of times there's multiple additional steps that you need to take to get certifications and things like that. And I'll talk about that in the training and expertise section a little bit more. But these are the kinds of overachievement items that I would specify as always be asking for additional opportunities, things you can do for the organization. Come up with ideas when you hear of a challenge or a problem or you're aware of it. Try to solve it. And bring ideas to your management and team lead. They'll recognize that if they're a good manager, and you'll be able to get opportunities to do more, to have greater responsibility, and to also get training classes that might be offered to future leaders, managers, trainers. So that kind of overachievement piece is great. Now, again, just working for working's sake, putting in 12 hours, but half the time you're just scrolling through TikTok or watching YouTube videos is not really what you want to do. Just having hours on a time card is not beneficial, especially when you get into federal work, where you really need to have good documented timekeeping and things like that, where you don't want people just sitting around because the government does not want to be paying for a labor base that isn't active and productive. So just keep that in mind. It's not necessarily more hours. It's using those hours to get more done, to bring more ideas into the fray, to get training and doing those things too. So again, those are the kind of overachievement pieces that I'm referring to. And again, it's individual. Just as long as you get noticed within your organization is probably, for good things, is one of the best ways to be able to move up the stack. Now, motivation and intention is the next piece, and it's really important because, again, I kind of go back and forth between this idea of, for me, I always wanted to do the right thing and to deliver good service. And so my motivation was to help the customer, get their service delivered, to improve the customer service, improve the customer experience. And so I was focused on trying to figure out ways to do that. And one of the things that you may have heard, many of you may have heard about, working in any job really, is to kind of become a trusted advisor to your customer. And what that means is that when you prove yourself to your customer repeatedly, they begin to trust you, right? So you deliver good service and even above and beyond service, you've got a better opportunity for the customer to come back to you and say, hey, I know you did A really good, but here's B. Do you know anything about B? And then you can either learn about B or about B today, and you can deliver A and B to your customer. You've just grown your contract because you delivered good above and beyond service, and the customer was looking for somebody to help them, and your name came up in their minds. That's the kind of intention that I feel is beneficial. The motivation is to serve the customer. Your intention is good and positive. You want to save the government some money. You want to deliver the best possible product. You want to come forward with some really cool ideas like innovations. All of those things, those motivations and intentions are going to keep you going. Now, the other thing is like, for me, I've always been, and I don't mean this disparagingly, I've always been kind of geeky. I always like the technology stuff and looking into those new technologies and things like that. Now that I'm older, trust me, I'm not anywhere near as connected to the latest and greatest as I used to be. But I still like to learn. You always, I think, people that are in IT, it's one of those fields that generally you want to tinker, you want to learn, you want to, conquer new things, whether it be coding or whether it be, just understanding how to dismantle and deliver a better PC, any of those things. You have this desire to learn, and that desire can translate into you being able to deliver better services to your customer. So again, now motivation, I'll say, is one of the hardest things to talk about, because so many times it seems to come from an unknown place, right? A lot of times you'll hear people say, you really can't teach motivation, you kind of have to have it. And some of that's true, some of it maybe not, particularly around situations where you've got somebody that's excited, but that excitement may be spread. And if you're one of those people, it's not a problem. If you have a lot of excitement in a lot of different areas, and I will say, I had a manager for years that said, I would much rather try to restrain you and hold you back as you drive forward than push you. And so that's exactly this same kind of situation. Is somebody may like a lot of different things, and all they need is a little bit of focus or some guidance and help along the way to focus that. If that's you, don't feel bad about it. If you find a good leader and a mentor, they will help you focus that energy and desire to deliver those services. Find something you love and are interested in kind of delivering, and you can excel in that space. And again, with passion comes this kind of excitement. You can kind of hear it in my voice too. I've always been that way, where if you're excited, your customers and your staff and everyone will, at least it's somewhat contagious. So you can generate some excitement from everybody if you care about what you're delivering and know that it makes a difference. So again, with motivation and intention, remember that, if you're in a federal contract, there is a significant outcome that can impact a lot of different things. So, for example, if you're delivering an IT contract for a large federal agency and you figure out a way to deliver, mobile devices faster and more efficiently, you could literally improve everything about the communication path in that organization and save the government money directly. Now, if we had a bunch of federal contractors that were all focused on this, imagine the kind of benefits that we could see. So always remember, like for me, I have managed lots of service desks, and so my heart is with the service desk agents because they're so incredibly important in delivering services like what we would call end user support, which is you have a person, you deliver all their IT stuff. And in that case, a lot of times the call center is the first line of support. It's the place where you go if you have a question and a concern. And how many of us have had that call where you dial in and you just have someone that's not engaging or that is unmotivated, and you can tell, and they just don't care. That comes across immediately. So it's a direct interaction with the customer that can essentially help to set the stage for delivering above and beyond service. So again, motivation and intention, make sure that they're there and that you are driven to succeed, because those things are going to be needed to get up the chain into kind of the program management role. So the last piece that I'll mention here is service. So a service mindset is kind of unique, I will say that. So and it took me years to kind of figure this out. I was actually taught this by folks that I interacted with that helped me understand, well, how do you serve? What does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that you are not leading, right? You still can lead, but you can also serve at the same time. And what that means is, if you from a customer perspective, you are focused on delivering the best possible service you can to them, and you are connected to their goals, right? So you need to understand your customer. They use the term customer intimacy. You have to understand what they're trying to get to. Where is their future state? What is it that they're trying to do? And help push them along to that particular goal. Because a lot of times your customer may not know what the next step is. And this idea of service is, hey, I understand where you're trying to go. Don't worry about the interim steps. We'll get you through that and help you through that process. And that creates a bond with your customer, like I mentioned earlier, that's trust, that builds this trusted advisorship, and you're able to deliver more and more services to that customer. So this mindset of service to the customer is huge. Now, mindset to your employees is important too. So one of the biggest challenges that I learned was that everyone's motivated differently, and I think you learn this the more people you interact with. There's different things that motivate people, whether it is financial, whether it is job opportunities, whether it's time. It could be any of those things, or they just want to be heard and they want their ideas to flourish. Those kinds of things. Any of those things can be motivators, and to serve in a leadership, role is to be able to understand that and be able to glean and direct your energy towards helping them, with motivation in that space. For example, if you know that someone responds really well to positive reinforcement, where number one, and I think everybody likes this, whether they tell you or not, is to acknowledge really good work, to get excited when somebody delivers something amazing or comes up with a really cool idea. You get that excitement out, and then you show everybody that it's important. As a leader, these things are going to be really important. That's the kind of service that I'm talking about. So as soon as you become a supervisor or manager, those kinds of things are things you can begin to implement. Is understand what your individual employees care about. And that way you can help to target your motivation for them and gratitude for their service in those areas, so that they understand you appreciate what they're doing. So those kinds of things are important to from the very start of your career to kind of practice and encourage and work through. So from a mindset perspective, all of those pieces are good to have. None of them are required, but all of those things will help you through the process of getting started towards this journey. Now, I had mentioned earlier about this idea of trying to grab training and getting leadership and expertise along the way. So let's talk about that. So I mentioned the labor category concept, which is that a lot of times there's actually a floor on being able to even apply for some positions, whether good or bad. Because again, the older I get, the less I think specific degrees are required. I think a lot of focused certifications now are even more powerful than generalized, a degree, a bachelor's degree. So keep that in mind. I think that's growing everywhere. So I think that will get better. But when it comes to training, so the things that you want to focus on is, first off, become an expert in a lot of different things. So, one of the biggest challenges from a PM perspective is, you kind of have to know a little about a lot of things. And sometimes you can be an expert in some of them, but you have to at least understand how you're delivering a lot of these different services. So, for example, if you decided you wanted to be, and I'm going to use my general example again, an IT program manager, it helps to have a broad understanding of all kinds of IT services that you might deliver. So, for example, when I started out, I got a Network Plus certification. This is dating me a little bit. Network Plus certification. I got some certifications in call center delivery, and I got some certifications around security. So those kinds of things. Now, again, I was not an expert in any of them. These were foundational elements, but I started to understand how these things interconnected. And they all do. Like all those three things that I just mentioned are going to be required on nearly any program that you deliver that has end user support in the title. And I bet it's the same in a lot of your specific fields too, is that you'll start to see the interconnectedness of so many of these pieces. So it helps you not only learn, but put the pieces together about what kind of services are delivered across the contract. And I'll mention that broad spectrum also helps you to offer ideas and suggestions on how to improve services across the entire contract. That kind of knowledge gets you out of let's say a bubble where, hey, I'm a service desk agent and that's what I do, to, hey, I'm interested also in engineering and security, and I can do all of these different things, and I see how they interconnect. I see how important it is to have security be a foundational element of everything that we do, et cetera, et cetera. And hey, here's some ideas that I had about making sure that our service desk delivery is secure and that we're thinking about these things. Those kinds of things will always be beneficial. And so having that broad spectrum of knowledge, I think, is a good starting point to be able to become a supervisor, and then up from there. So that's step one, is kind of get those training classes under your belt for your primary area of expertise, what you want to go into. So for example, like I said, I can speak to IT, but if you wanted to go into something like agricultural program management, you would need to have classes and a broad understanding of the elements that would be needed to deliver an agricultural program. So those are the kinds of things, and you'll get an idea as you go through your career of what those things really are and what's important to make sure that you're trained in. So from that perspective, again, take advantage of your company's benefits. So another thing that frustrates a lot of folks is that you're not kind of given suggestions for training a lot of times. You have to go out and get them, and just go out and get it. Because a lot of times your company will give a training budget that you can tap into, and sometimes they give you X amount of dollars a year or something, but try to find out what that is and try to engage and use it. It is directly benefiting you, and a lot of times they'll pay for almost everything. Now, that being said, here's a little quirk of the federal space that I want to mention, is that in a lot of contracts, the government will not allow you to charge your hours for training and additional schooling and stuff like that. Some may, some might not. But the reason that I mention this is that, for example, when I decided, I want to go and get my MBA, at that point I was probably a second level supervisor, and I knew that I needed more schooling and better, qualifications to continue to step up the ramp. But when I did that, I knew, well, I'm going to have to do this on my own time. And it was hard. I mean, at the time I had a wife and a daughter, and my wife was also going to school, and we were raising our daughter. And so, there are sacrifices there. that I think are beneficial. But I'll tell you, it's paid off. That particular element has definitely paid off over time because, number one, I think it helped jumpstart a couple of opportunities into higher level jobs. And number two, I think that getting something like an MBA, and my MBA was in IT management, it helped me to understand all the different pieces that are needed to be a good program manager. It really got into things like leadership and understanding, how to communicate with folks. And I'll talk to those two in just a little bit as well. But a lot of that comes from the classes. But I will say too, if you've ever been in, certain training classes that teach theory, you're going to realize if you've been delivering services that theory doesn't always translate into the field, but it's good information to know, and it helps as kind of a baseline to qualify you for moving up the stack. So again, take advantage of training opportunities that your company offers. Look for them. You'll have to go out generally, to the website or get in touch with HR. Do what you can to search those things out and be able to take those classes yourself and figure out how much of a benefit you can utilize in that space. It's tough, but that's the best way to, kind of be able to improve your visibility in your organization, and also looking for additional jobs down the line is if you have those qualifications, that makes all the difference in the world. So training is wildly important. From the other perspective around expertise, again, I started to talk about having an area of broad expertise, which is kind of a smaller amount of expertise in any one specific area, but have that be fairly broad. So the term is a generalist versus a specialist in any particular one area. Now, certainly, let me tell you, there are people that are specialists that become program managers all the time. And particularly for things that are like, if you were going to run a cybersecurity program, a lot of times you are going to need to be a cyber expert in that PM role. So again, be aware that specialists can, just as easily become, program managers. But for me, it was better to be a generalist in my IT area. So again, it's a generalist within a domain of expertise. It's not a generalist in everything, although you will need to know a broad set of skills, but it's a generalist within a particular domain. And I think that really helped me out because down the line, you're going to interface with a lot of different groups and teams. And if you can speak the language and understand how they're communicating with, whether it's a technology like email, or whether it's networks, or it's call centers, if you understand the basics of that stuff, then you'll better understand how you're delivering services, and also be able to provide some guidance and suggestions around how you can improve that service delivery, how you can get things done better throughout that process. So those pieces are really important. I think the training and expertise elements, that's on you, honestly. It's really, it's something you control. So you control whether you go out and learn more, whether you are like watching educational YouTube videos, or you're taking a look at what's the latest and greatest technology out there. Those things are great. And again, certifications are fantastic because, again, you're able to put those letters behind your name a lot of times. It looks painful, and it's painful to me too. I can't stand it. But the fact of the matter is that when you're applying for a job, those letters matter. And people will see that, and you will bubble to the top of a stack of resumes if you have additional capabilities and features that people would be interested in. So think about that as you're going through the process. Now, leadership and communication skills. So this one's interesting because this is basically soft skills. So one of the hardest things I think is the interpersonal kind of events that you have to deal with, how you interface with people, how people react, and managing people. Because I will say, as a program manager, and I've run teams of 300 plus, and right now I've got over 700 staff in the space that I'm in, that there's always a personnel situation, always. So you need to be able to speak competently and compassionately to a lot of different people that are focused on many different things, many different styles, backgrounds, all of this stuff. you need to be able to be compassionate and have those conversations in a productive way, that is empathetic and also caring and valuing the people that you're talking to, but also needs to have strength. You need to be able to direct and guide. You need to be even, not forceful. You don't want to overstep, a power boundary in any way, shape, or form. Just be careful with that, because certainly I've seen situations where, you can, managers get full of themselves and they can shift from a leader into almost an abuse of power. Just be really careful about that. When you're speaking to somebody, do it with respect and understanding, and you'll go much farther in working with that person and helping them to succeed. So in that space, you are going to have to deal with people. So something you need to think about early on is, are you okay with that? Because what's funny is, even my personality externally a lot of times comes across as, well, you're a people person. You like to talk to people. And it's funny because I would always refer to myself as an introvert. Like, well, no, I'm perfectly fine, being on my own, reading or doing something by myself, playing a video game, doing something that doesn't involve other people. But I know that when I interface with other people, that I want to, encourage that person. I want them to walk away from that interaction positively, right? So the interpersonal skills are going to be important, and I'll say this. So I did public speaking is tough. There's no question about it, but it's a practice-based system. I'll just tell you that. There's the first time you do it, you're terrified. I remember the first conference that I spoke at, and this is going to date me too, was a BlackBerry conference. If you are not familiar with BlackBerry, it was kind of a communications technology where it was like a smartphone, but not smart at all, and it was just email. And I remember going in and starting to speak at that conference, and my mouth went completely dry right before I started to talk. And I thought, what is going on? I didn't even have, control over it, so to speak. My mouth went dry immediately, and I was like, I've never had that happen to me before. So it's okay to deal with that. When you're dealing with people, you can be nervous. You will develop that capability over time. But the public speaking classes, they may sound silly, but I highly recommend them. Toastmasters, stuff like that. I was in Toastmasters. This is way, way, way back. But that really helped me. It helped me get comfortable speaking around people and to large groups, and being okay with it, and creating a comfortable environment where you can talk, intelligently and calmly with folks. So I definitely recommend taking that opportunity to go out and work with something like Toastmasters to hone your skills, hone the skills of communication, and hone the idea of working and meeting with people. Now, that being said, like, for example, one of the things that still stresses me to this day is like the parties and things like that, where you may have a group of people getting together. I would say it's a challenging situation for me still, is making sure that I'm okay with that. That I go in and that I mingle and that I don't get stuck in a corner. I constantly have to kind of push myself and move my boundaries out a little bit. And I'm sure many of you have heard this, is, kind of expand your boundaries if you can in those kinds of things, and push yourself out of your comfort zone. It does work. It's a pain and nobody likes to do it, but it does benefit you over time. So those kinds of things, interfacing with people and getting used to people, are going to help you throughout this process, because it never goes away. So, and that's not a bad thing, but you will always be dealing with people regardless of where you are in the supervisory chain. You may be dealing direct with people at your direct reports may be working directly with the customer if you're managing a call center. But then you may get up the chain a little bit, and you may be responsible for teams that sit underneath you. But then you're going to be working with the team leads directly, and so you'll always have a team that you're working with, and that interpersonal relationship is going to be really important. One of the other pieces when it comes to working with people is your communication skills. So being able to understand how to communicate ideas in a simple and direct way, so that folks are not confused by what you're asking them to do, really one of my bigger challenges. I'll just be honest. It was making sure that I was telling folks, this is exactly what I need, and I need you to do it. Those kinds of things were always really hard for me. I always used the collective we, and it would just confuse people. Like I'd say, well, we really need to do this. And then I'd walk away from that discussion, and that individual might have no idea that I was expecting them to do it when I used the collective we. But again, there's a fine line that you have to walk there where you don't want to sound overbearing and pushy, but you are, a manager and you need these things done. So, be direct. But don't speak down to people. Just be direct and ask for specifically what you need. And if there are questions, they need to be able to come back and ask you without feeling like you're reprimanding them. So those things are important to develop that kind of open door policy where people feel like they're comfortable coming in, asking you questions, and you're working together to get to, some sort of end solution, and you're there to support them. I mean, I think that goes a long way. One of the things that I've always, told my staff is, we all have to have each other's back. We're all operating with integrity, and we have to support each other because there's going to be rough days that everybody has, and you're going to need a support system to be able to get you through those and help you deal with mistakes. If you're a manager, your employees are going to make mistakes. And how you deal with them is an absolutely critical element to what kind of leader you're going to become and what kind of leader they see you as. If you understand that there's mistakes, and again, there's a fine line between an honest mistake that occurs versus something that is constantly recurring and is a problem. You all will understand my meaning there. So you do have to be able to tell the difference between the two. You give folks a chance. And then you work into situations where if they continue to repeat that, maybe that's not the right position for them. Maybe they need to try something different, or even unfortunately move on from the contract if they're not able to deliver the kinds of things that you need. Those are hard decisions that you're going to have to make, and you have to be able to do them objectively and not feel bad about it. So again, working on your interpersonal skills is a great way to kind of continue to get better and better from a program manager perspective. Now, once you get those pieces together, from a training perspective, then one of the next steps is to really start program management and project management training. So I do recommend that you look at a PMP, which is a program management professional, or also you can get into project management, which is not a bad step up, right? So again, my kind of escalation over time is that you might be a project manager or a team lead to start, which means you'll have a small team with a project. You might just have one single focused requirement, where if you're running a team, you may have an objective that you do constantly, like deliver call center support or things like that. Then you kind of move up the stack a little bit and you become a manager over multiple teams. Once you get to that point, you really do want to be focused on getting things like a PMP or other certifications. So PMP is, program management professional, project management professional, and you want to be able to get those certifications because that will open the door to being able to be a PM of a larger, type of contract. So, for example, and also I will say this: so you generally have to have leadership skills and examples of leadership skills to be able to move into a PM role. So for example, if you're like, let's say, in a team lead role and you'd like to step up to the next elements, what you want to do is start to, look at those certifications around becoming a project management professional, a PMP, and there's program management professionals, that's a PGMP. You can get either one of those and begin to show that, yes, I'm interested in taking on greater responsibility, potentially managing multiple projects simultaneously. That starts to show your ability to multitask and deal with different requirements at the same time. And then you can start to go to something like a group area manager, like a director. Like you may have multiple teams underneath you that also have teams underneath them. Those kinds of things will get you well into the position to become a program manager. Now, if you are working on projects, a couple of things about that. Number one is I think that's a great opportunity to learn a lot of the basics that you're going to need later on down the line, which is things like scheduling, budget, managing resources, all of the basic project management types of skills that you need to develop. Because no matter the size of the program that you're dealing with, those things are always going to come into play. Even at this point where there's, I've got hundreds of people that are in my organization, I still am working with finances. I'm still dealing with resource management. I'm still dealing with scheduling. One of the biggest things I work on day to day is utilization and capacity management of our teams to make sure that, hey, do we have enough staff to deliver all of these things? How do we manage the demand requests that are coming in? So from a project management perspective, when you start doing that, all those things, super important. Get comfortable with doing them, because even things like budget, a lot of times you'll, in an organization, you'll be kind of separated from budget sometimes, where, you might be a project manager and you may be given hours, but you won't be given cost. If your leader will allow you to understand that and you ask about it, that'll be a huge step in the right direction. Because if you understand the finances that sit underneath it, it's going to connect a lot of dots in being able to deliver a program. Now, that being said, the first foray that you might take into program management or basically program management from a federal perspective, it's best to go after a small program. So, there are programs out there that, are certainly less than $500,000 a year that may have 2 or 3 people on it. That's perfectly fine to start that because, again, when you have a situation where you have, 2 or 3 people and you have a budget, it's $500,000 or whatever, and you've got to work through that and make sure that you're delivering, you're providing deliverables. There's requirements that you have to give to the federal government that are written in the contract. You get used to being able to deliver those kinds of things. And at that point, if you're really good at those things, then we're just really talking scale, right? So you may go from a $500K contract with a small business to maybe a 10 or 15 person contract where you're looking at maybe $1 million a year or more. That's when it starts to get, real, where you're basically really doing program management support, and you have got to have, at that point, have honed your skills on understanding things like financial management, like resource management, like deliverables, and understanding contracts. That's a piece I missed earlier. Contract management, I took some courses in contract management and that really helped me. I didn't want to become a contract manager per se, but if you're interested in doing federal government work, do contract management, because one of the things that you'll hear over and over and over again from anybody that's in the federal contracting spaces, know your contract, know your contract, know your contract. They'll say it 3 times because you literally have to understand what is in that contract, because the letter of that contract is what you are delivering to the federal government. It is an agreed upon set of terms, not only around things like cost, but also deliverables. These are requirements that you have to deliver to the government in the course of delivering the services. It could also have things like the total number of staff you might have, the different areas of responsibility you have to deliver. Those things are hyper important to understand really, really well, because essentially, as many of you that have maybe run a project know, you can very quickly get into scope creep and things like that, where you're asked to do things that are outside of the bounds of the contract and that you should really be, your company should be compensated for. It should be in addition to the contract, those kinds of things. So having some sort of contract management expertise under your belt is probably a good idea. There's plenty of YouTube videos on it too that are pretty good. Try to find reputable ones, obviously, that have, that are either connected with, viable or reputable companies and things like that. Just be careful, because contracts management is going to be one of those things that you're going to have to deal with, forever. So make sure you're learning those pieces. So those are the kinds of things that can get you started in the program management space. So in future discussions, I'll talk about, different things that you deal with as a program manager. I think one of the biggest challenges is the mental strain that you will get being a program manager, and how to prepare yourself for that, how to give yourself time to strengthen your focus, strengthen your ability to deal with stress, strengthen your ability to handle multiple projects and issues simultaneously, strengthen your ability to manage things like failure and dealing with angry customers or dealing with losses that may occur in a contract, and having to manage those kinds of things. It's all stressful. And as we go down the pike, I'll also talk about, you heard me allude to this broad range of expertise that you need to know. Program managers are constantly expected to walk a fine line between the requirements of the company and delivering to the customer, right? And a lot of times those might not be directly in line. They will be most of the time. So in other words, companies in this space are good about focusing on positive delivery to the customer, doing whatever they can to deliver good services to the customer. However, you also may have requirements for things like profitability and margins that you have to deliver to your management within the company. And also the customer wants you to deliver it at the lowest cost. So you've got to be able to reconcile those two and deliver both of them. So this again gets into your ability to manage multiple tasks simultaneously. So you want to make sure you're delivering to the customer, above and beyond, but that you're also focused on delivering efficiently and effectively, and you've got the right people in the right places to be able to reduce your costs and deliver better margin for your company. Because again, those things are important to continue the business going. And also things like those things can contribute to the ability for you to compensate your employees, to give them bonuses and things like that. So it's always important to keep those things in balance, because again, the companies, virtually every company that I've been with in the federal space would rather you deliver well to the customer than focus on profitability. It's just the reality of the situation. I've had good managers that operate with integrity. That's really important. It's like, yep, when it comes down to the end of the day, you've got to deliver well to the customer. We understand that you may have a profitability drop. I certainly had very low margin programs in the past that just simply were not able to be adjusted. So you will have that kind of tug of war going on to make sure that you're delivering great services, but also delivering value to the company as well. And that's one of those examples of these kind of multi-dimensional pressures that are going to hit you. You also want to make sure you're delivering well for your staff and you're providing things like career development and HR. That's something you need to be looking at. You need to make sure that you have good leaders that are operating underneath you, and you have an understanding of what they're doing, and you have an understanding of what you're delivering day to day. You have a good pulse on the customer's sense of how your delivery is. All of those things add to the plate of a program manager and can add pressure to all those situations. So I hope this was helpful. Again, I appreciate you stopping by and listening to this. It will be the first of more that I'll be interested in doing. And if you have specific questions, please feel free to comment down below, or to again in these sessions, comment in the chat, ask questions, anything that you're interested in discussing. I'm happy to shift the discussion to whatever needs or questions you may have. So again, the goal of this is to help you if you're interested in becoming a federal program manager, or if you're undecided, or you're trying to figure out how do I get there, what do I do. That's what this channel is designed to be for. I'm just trying to share my experience over the past 20 years to try to help you get over some of those hurdles, to sidestep some of the challenges that I ran into, and hopefully get you more quickly to your career as a program manager, and get you successful as soon as possible. So for those of you that are on the live stream, thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate your time. For those of you that are watching this on YouTube after the fact, please feel free to comment below with any questions that you may have. Also consider liking and subscribing to the channel if you want more information around being a federal program manager, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks, everyone.